Such an Eskimo wedding in the far north. Unusual traditions of the Aborigines of Chukotka. Greetings! Today we are going to talk about wedding and other traditions of Eskimos living in the territory of the Chukchi region. Is it true that Chukchi drink alcohol to exhaustion after sunset? What is an Eskimo kiss? Is it true that in the Aboriginal dwellings you can even find a Winchester, and where do such trophies come from? Be sure to watch the video to the very end to learn all the details of life of the peoples of the far north. Abundant supplies of animal products. Most likely, many of you associate Chukotka Krai and the north of Russia with reindeer, ptarmigan, and seals. In reality, it is so. The flora in these regions is quite peculiar and not the same as in other geographical areas. That is why the Eskimos living in the far north eat mostly wild animal meat. Did you know that annually Chukchi people slaughter about 100,000 reindeer a year? The meat of these animals is especially valued by the Aborigines of the Chukchi region. Moreover, slaughtering reindeer is as common as growing and eating vegetables in most regions of the Russian Federation. In addition to meat, Eskimos are experienced taxidermists. The skins of not only reindeer but also of Arctic foxes are the most valuable. Also, hunters of the far north hunt ptarmigan, extract seal oil and, of course, are engaged in fishing. For example, this nation has an abundance of dried fish. With these products, they often treat guests arriving in the northern territories, wedding ceremonies of Eskimos. Here we come to the most important thing. Let's finally understand how a wedding takes place in the Chukchi and what traditions have existed in the northern people for several decades. First of all, the bride and groom must first smear the sacrificial reindeer with blood and then draw several symbols on the animal's body. The latter signify the protection of the future family from all sorts of ailments and evil charms. After that, the sacrifice is exposed to fire and three components: sunset, enlightenment, and the spirit that protects the house. This is the first ceremony, and it takes place in the yarang, dwelling of the groom. Second, the couple, along with family and friends, goes to the parents of the daughter-in-law, but as you can probably guess, not empty-handed. As guests are presented with reindeer and treats. Here, the second wedding ceremony does not end, but begins again. What do the Eskimos do when they have a guest in their circle? Let's imagine the situation. What if someone has to visit the Chukchi? Especially, so to speak, at the most opportune moment. If anything, we are talking about a wedding. Since history has known cases based on real events, let's analyze one of them. In the early 90s, one of the travelers, whose name was Boris, was lucky enough to find himself in the far north. He accidentally stumbled upon an Eskimo shack. Fortunately for the man, he was welcomed warmly. Chukchi in general treat guests quite well, after which they treat them with gifts and can even drink for acquaintance. And so it happened in the end. Before nightfall, Boris witnessed an Eskimo wedding ceremony. During the day, he was treated to dried fish and reindeer meat, and after sunset, they brought reindeer liver and alcohol. And not just a hot drink, but a whole case. The natives suggested that the traveler drink to the acquaintance. After a while, girls and women began to sit down to Boris. All the women's attention was concentrated on the guest. The Eskimo men drank alcohol over and over again and lay in a drunken state. Finally, one of them said to Boris in a direct text, "Sleep with my wife." Now it was clear that the potential groom was not one of the natives, but Boris. After that, several men harnessed reindeer and took Boris and the woman to the shore of the Chukchi Sea. There they were met by a local shaman with bells. All those present gathered in a circle. After that, the shaman struck the tambourine and said that from now on, the woman was a wife for Boris. So they gave one of the Aboriginal women as a wife for the Russian traveler. And the latter was also warned. If he dared to run away, the Chukchi would start shooting. Plus, at the wedding ceremony, Boris was kissed in the Eskimo way. Let's find out what it is. Eskimo kiss. Have you ever seen how Chukchi people approach each other and start rubbing their noses? Well, this is also one of the peculiarities of the traditions of the peoples of the far north, which is called Eskimo kiss. This is how Aborigines show their kinship and care. It is also believed that there is no traditional form of kissing in Eskimos, because in harsh climatic conditions and in the cold, you can easily get weathered. Eskimo kiss has existed for quite a long time, and its unique feature is known to many travelers, researchers, and curious people. Strange to the average person Aboriginal traditions. We draw your attention to the fact that in the life of Eskimos, there are a number of other traditions that relate to the relationship between a man and a woman. They may seem quite specific to the average person. Nevertheless, such traditions do exist among northern peoples. So, the male part of the Chukchi population is allowed and even encouraged to temporarily share their wives. This happens when men enter neighbouring territories and choose their female applicants. This is not at all immoral for such nationalities, as it is considered a favourable condition for maintaining the gene pool and the development of several tribes. It is not uncommon for such actions to result in the pregnancy of girls and women. In this case, all the inhabitants of the settlement gather and celebrate the event. One of the peculiarities of marriage among Eskimos is the conclusion of the marriage union before the heirs grow up. In addition, children from different tribes can fully not only get used to each other, but also build strong relationships. And not only friendly, but also loved ones. From year to year, the Chukchi check families for adaptation to isolation. As is known, living conditions in the north are very harsh. To make sure that the tribe is resistant and survivable in any conditions, it is isolated from the most suitable and favourable places. As practice shows, the Chukchi successfully cope with this task. For the Aborigines, it is a sign that the tribe is worthy of the highest praise and is capable of its continuation. A surprising find in an Eskimo Yarang. You will be surprised, but a few decades ago, Russian researchers came across a rather valuable trophy. In one of the Chukchi Yarangs, they found an ancient rifle, a Winchester. Yes, it turns out that Eskimos possess many other useful items. But where did they come from? It turns out that the Aborigines are often given various items from nearby northern territories. They are treated with respect and a low bow. And for kindness and hospitality are ready to give really something interesting. As for the Winchester, it was given to the locals from Alaska. And there is Greenland and the North Pole nearby. So the neighbours of the northern regions often drop in on the Eskimos to get to know the locals and the culture of the latter. Conclusion. Thus, the Eskimos, aka Chukchi, as well as the Aborigines of the far north, are an amazing people of Russia. Their traditions, especially those concerning weddings and family life, can surprise many. Nevertheless, they are hospitable and friendly people who often receive guests in the northern part of our country.